A couple of NFC West rivals to the Seattle Seahawks might be moving some of their high-profile veterans this offseason. What's going on, everybody? We made it to the weekend. Happy Saturday morning. We are just about to the NFL Combine. We are just about to the start of NFL free agency. Things are starting to open up. Things are going to start happening any day now. It is about to be an exciting time to be a football fan once again after a little bit of a lull. And there are some things starting to bubble in the NFC West. And I thought we'd go ahead and take a minute to talk about this because the effect that this all has on the Seattle Seahawks is pretty clear and obvious. We're going to talk about two news items. One is several days old at this point. The other one came up basically late yesterday, but both are items that I haven't really discussed on this channel yet, and both have a very obvious and clear effect on the Seattle Seahawks as we go into 2025. So we're going to start with the big one here, and then we're going to move to the other one, which I do consider to be of significantly less impact, but nevertheless is notable. Before we get to that, though, I hope you like this video. If you do, please click the like button down below. Subscribe if you're new. Click the bell for notifications. Become a channel member for $2 a month. Those are the best ways to help support the channel. Okay, so the big thing going on right now in the NFC West concerns the LA Rams and their quarterback. So there's been some buzz this offseason leading up to yesterday's announcement that the LA Rams might be looking to strip things down a little bit for 2025. And we knew that included Cooper Kupp. It's pretty much a given that Cooper Kupp will not be on the Rams in 2025. Whether they trade him or release him, he's not going to be there. We are pretty much positive about that. It would be very surprising if anything else happened. So there's that, which will have an impact. It might not have the big impact that some people would assume. Kupp is not what he used to be, but there is going to be some negative impact there if he's not there. However, this one, the impact is more clear and more clearly negative for the Rams. Not to say that they shouldn't do it, not to say that it's a bad idea for them to do it, but supposedly the Rams may be looking to move on from Matthew Stafford. So that's quite a thing. That's quite a potential move. That would certainly mark the end of the Rams' most defined era since they moved to LA. They've already moved on from so much that made their Super Bowl team go. They've moved on from Jalen Ramsey. Aaron Donald has retired. You're moving on from Cooper Kupp. We just talked about that. Andrew Whitworth has retired. He's been retired for a little bit now. You've moved on from guys like, if you want to throw a guy like a Von Miller or Leonard Floyd in there, those guys were part of the Super Bowl team and now they're long gone, but they were certainly big parts of the team that won the Super Bowl. They've basically turned almost everything over from the team that won the Super Bowl. Even a guy like Ernest Jones, who was a rookie when they won the Super Bowl, has moved on from the Rams and is obviously currently with Seattle. Could go elsewhere in a few weeks, but for the moment, point is he's not on the Rams anymore. There isn't much left from the Super Bowl winning Rams team. They still have McVay, obviously, but if Stafford gets traded, they really are just completely moving on. And all of the truly notable players, except maybe, I think there's one offensive lineman who's still there, will have moved on to a different team since that Super Bowl. And it's a quarterback, right? I think that regardless of how important or how good you think that Stafford is, I know that some people are higher on him than others. Moving on from your starting quarterback from the year you won the Super Bowl is quite a thing, especially when it only happened like 4 years ago. And the Rams did make the divisional round this most recent season and play a pretty good game against the Eagles, who went on to win the Super Bowl in pretty dominating fashion. So to move on from the quarterback that enabled you to do that is not a small thing at all. So obviously they're thinking about a little bit of long-term stuff here. They're thinking about the fact that Stafford is, I think, 37 now. They're thinking about the fact that the cliff is coming. They're thinking about the fact that he has a lot of miles on him. He's gotten some injuries over the last couple of years, right? He missed most of 2022. He missed a couple of games in 2023. I think he was pretty much completely healthy in 2024, but they don't want to play with fire forever. And at some point, they know they're going to have to turn the page. If they're turning the page on Cooper Kupp, maybe in their minds, they may as well turn the page on Stafford as well. So I get the logic. I don't think it's a bad idea for them, but it's still a thing. It's a thing that is going to probably cost you a realistic chance to compete in 2025 because he's still a very good quarterback. He's still capable of doing some very good things in this league. He's still, I don't know exactly where I would rank him. I don't know exactly where I would put him compared to other quarterbacks in the league. That's always hard because he does have McVay. But there have been moments over the last couple years where he is offensively the only thing that is really keeping that team afloat. That Cooper Kupp has missed a lot of time over the last 2 years. He's had Puka, but Puka's missed a lot of time too, actually. Last year, he missed significant amounts of time, and Stafford was able to keep things going at a decent rate. So losing him does mean losing out on some opportunity to compete in 2025 that you probably cannot get back with any other quarterback. Now, that's not to say that they can't get back to some degree of relevance, because they do have McVay, who is one of the best coaches in the league. They do have an offensive system that should be able to keep moving with other quarterbacks, but there are things Stafford can do that separate him from most other quarterbacks in the league that they're not going to be able to replace. They're not going to be able to get a guy like a Mahomes. They're not going to be able to get a guy like a Josh Allen. They're not going to be able to get a Justin Herbert. The best quarterback that's going to be available in free agency this year is Sam Darnold, and I don't think they're going to want to go after somebody that expensive. A quarterback like a Russell Wilson doesn't fit McVay's offense whatsoever. So those are your only two really strong options that you could go after, to let you guys know how weak it is out there in terms of getting a veteran free agent quarterback. Maybe Kirk Cousins is available in a trade, but I don't think that would be as good as what Stafford has given you lately. So I get it, but it is interesting to see this accelerate. The Rams are not necessarily a team that would feel great about having a step back season, but if they trade Stafford, that's probably what's going to happen. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that team if they decide to do this, because we know that their fan base is probably very fickle. We know that their attendance is probably very fickle. And if a Stafford does go, what becomes of that team's fan base in 2025? What becomes of their stadium? What becomes of their home games? So it's going to be interesting to see, but it sure seems like this is on the way to happening. The only question is, what is somebody going to be willing to give up for a 37-year-old quarterback who is still clearly very good, but could stop being very good at any moment, and I don't think it would surprise anybody that much. The father time stuff comes for everybody, so where does this go? I've heard the Giants could be interested, which I think would be a really, really bad idea for the Giants, but the Giants love bad ideas. What's the difference? I've heard a little bit about maybe the Steelers being interested. I've heard maybe I think the Jets would make some degree of sense. I would certainly rather do that than trade for Kirk Cousins. Although it is worth noting the Rams apparently want quite a bit for Stafford. I've heard rumors that they want at least a first-round pick, which, if I'm a team that would consider trading for Stafford, I would certainly not consider doing it for a first-round pick, especially if I'm the Giants or the Jets, because my first-round picks are very valuable because my team isn't winning games right now. And if they want a first-round pick in the upcoming draft, the idea of giving up their first-rounder, which is in the top, 6 or 7, is comedy. but it's the kind of comedy that a team like the Jets or Giants could give us, I guess. As a Seahawks fan, I really hope the Rams don't get a return like that, because that probably would be a massive win for the Rams. If they get like a good first round pick in particular for Stafford, or even a mediocre first round pick for Stafford, that would probably end with them on top. That would probably be a scenario where they feel really, really good about what they get versus what they give up. I can feel that one coming. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I will say that big picture, maybe more important, is getting Stafford out of the division finally, because he has been a pain over the last several years. And at the end of the day, it's probably a little more important that we get that guy out of here so that the way is clear for the Seahawks in 2025, because the odds of the Rams, especially in this draft class of weak quarterbacks, getting a adequate surrogate for Stafford, somebody who is on the same level as Stafford, is very, very slim. So maybe that's more important than making sure the Rams don't get a good return on their investment. I could see it that way, but the Rams have been pretty good at drafting lately. I don't know if I need to give them more ammo either. So we'll see how this shakes out. Obviously, short term, it would be good for the Seahawks to get Stafford out of here. There was a rumor that they might even replace him with a Garoppolo, which that would be a dream come true. If Jimmy Garoppolo was the guy in charge of the Rams next year, I would feel really good about 2025 dealing with the Rams twice and dealing with them in the division. I assume they would want to do a little bit better than that. So we'll see where it goes, but this is certainly a big news in the NFC West. It has a big effect on everything, and it seems like it is probably going to happen. Now, the other NFC West trade rumor is of much less consequence, and at this point, arguably is of minor consequence, but this is still an accomplished player. This is a player that has made a Pro Bowl. He's made an All-Pro team. He's had great moments in postseason games. This is a guy who at one point fairly recently was considered to be one of the better players in the league. Deebo Samuel supposedly is going to get out of San Fran this offseason. Now, whether or not he wants out, whether or not he is getting pushed out, whether or not he's going to get traded, whether or not he's going to get released, we're not sure. It doesn't seem like there's going to be a big trade package for him. He's an older player. I know he's not super old in terms of his literal age, but in terms of the miles on his body, he's very old. And his recent production, like last year, was not particularly good for Deebo, and his track record of injuries, you wouldn't think that anybody would give up anything real for him. We're probably looking at like a 5th round pick at best, probably more like a 6th round pick. But it does seem like something could happen here. I would not be shocked if they end up just releasing him, because ultimately what they're trying to get is salary cap relief so they can take care of some of their players that are about to be or are immediately going to be more expensive. So one way or the other, it seems like Deebo's done in San Fran, and he's not a great player anymore by any stretch. I don't even know if he's good. There are good elements to him. He is a unique player. He does bring some things to the table that other wide receivers don't because of his skill set. But the party's pretty clearly over with Deebo being an elite receiver in my mind. I mean, last year the Niners didn't even have Ayuk, basically. Ayuk basically missed the season, and Deebo still didn't have overwhelming numbers. And it's not like Pearsall was the guy who was dominating to take balls away from Deebo. So if there was any year for Deebo to prove he still had it, it was last year, and it was pretty lackluster at times. It felt like he was just kind of a guy out there. So I don't think there will be a big impact on the Niners either way. He's there, he's not there. It does, however, mark an acknowledgement on that Niners team to some extent that they are starting to turn the page on some of their key pieces from their impressive run of NFC title game appearances recently. And as a Seahawks fan, I would have some quantum of appreciation for that. So that's definitely a thing. So that's the latest news. That's what we have so far. Rams looking to move Stafford. We already know they're looking to move Cup. It seems like both things are more likely to happen than not. Obviously, a Stafford trade is harder because they're not going to cut Stafford. If it comes to it, they will keep Stafford. It's not a Cooper Cup situation where they can just cut him. And I do think that's what happens with Cup ultimately, if I had to guess. So they're not going to just cut Stafford. They don't do that. He's too valuable. So they could keep Stafford, and the Niners look like they're moving on from Deebo. So that's two teams in your division that are on some level willingly making themselves worse. Maybe correctly making themselves worse, but losing veteran contributors that were going to have some impact on the team in 2025 if they were there. I think we can all agree on that. All right, sound off down below. Let me know what you think about this. Now, to be clear, I don't want either of these players. I don't want any of these players. And I think that that's probably a non-starter anyway. We're not going to trade for Deebo Samuel. We're not going to trade for Matt Stafford. That's goofy. But the point is, looks like they're going to be somewhere else. And the impact of that could be very, very significant in 2025. See you guys later. Go Hawks. And everyone have a good day.